You're listening to the Karmic Mirror podcast, where we explore the wisdom tucked within the layers of the self-help world.
Together, we bridge the gap between esoteric teachings and practical tools for everyday life, with self-love and personal growth at the heart of each conversation.
Whether you're a seasoned seeker or just beginning your path, join us and uncover the magic within and around you.
Hello, Karmic Mirror community listeners. We have a super nostalgic, special, all feels episode today as Michelle and I are digging into our reflections over the past year because Karmic Mirror is officially one. Hi, Michelle.
Hello. Happy birthday, Karmic Mirror.
Happy birthday, Karmic Mirror. Now, gosh, Michelle, how long were we pregnant with Karmic Mirror? I know we were going back and forth and you
Oh
sent
my
me
gosh.
the pregnant emoji and I think I was like in my flow looking back of that time of the month where I was a little scatterbrained and just was like, wait, this isn't how she would tell me she was pregnant. And you were like, no, I mean, Karmic Mirror was in the belly during that time.
Yeah. Well, we were trying to pull up the natal chart for Karmic Mirror and see, when did it birth into the world and what was considered kind of still in its cocoon. And I think it's honestly, if I had to guess, I really don't know. I think it was probably like 2 years of conversation about it, at least a year and a half, at least, of just talking about it, kind of planning. And then everything, as it does, came into the right timing, the right place to be able to just hit record and start and see where we went. And so here we are 1 year later. Very
Yeah.
exciting. It kind of went by really quickly, like anything. I mean, what is time? My favorite saying. But yeah, it's been a year and that's really cool. And I'm really proud to, so many things, so many reflections, so many themes have come up. And it really is like a ripple effect of what's come from this podcast, just inner world growth and how that's lining up with all of the things that have shown up in both of our worlds externally.
hmm
Yeah.
And when we were talking about that mirror and that karmic mirror, I don't know, you may have, but very three-lined here. I I don't know that I was prepared or realized how much karmic mirror would help me grow, would teach me lessons, would expand me in just so many different areas. And so I think for our listeners today, we're really just taking a beautiful journey back and talking and reflecting over our intentions around karmic mirror, what we wanted it to look like, what we wanted it to be, our personal lessons that we've learned along the way, mine and Michelle's relationship, how it's grown, how it's supported our other relationships just by working together through here.
Mhm.
I will take you back for those of you who don't know the journey. Michelle and I, and I'm getting chills right now, one of the first reflections I had is just really how full circle things come. So, one of my favorite things to think back on too is just really this name. And we had come to a place. So Michelle and I met in what is now Lumia life coaching certification program. And the way that we got there, well, the way that I got there was by way of a podcast. I heard John Kim on it. And why am I blanking at, oh, Mark Groves.
Yeah, it was Mark
I'm like,
Gross. Yeah, create the
Mark
love. Mhm.
Groves taught me about boundaries. So I'll make this a quick story. I heard John Kim on Mark Groves, and then he was talking about how they had at the time journey, and that's what led me into coaching. And that is where I met Michelle, and that is where we really built this strong foundation and our values and aligned, which eventually grew into Karmic Mirror. And one of the cool full circle moments was that at VCon when I saw Mark Groves and I went up to him and I just
Mm.
said, Mark Groves, I was like, you taught me about boundaries. And he could not have been cooler. And we were talking about our podcast. And he said, what's the name of your podcast? And I said, Karmic Mirror. And he just looked at me and he's like, that's a really fucking cool name.
It
And
is a good name.
in that moment, I just had this such full circle how it was Mark Groves who brought me to Lumia, which
Yeah.
brought me to you, which brought us to Karmic Mirror. And in this mirror and in the theme of Karmic Mirror, do you remember why did we connect so quickly to that name? We had like a bunch. Do you
Well, because
remember?
it sounds amazing. It rolls off the tongue. It has instant meaning. And, we were brainstorming names, right? Throwing different names out there. I think immediately we knew that we wanted our name to reflect some sort of shared element about our human design or our astrology, right? Like there was something that was like instant right away. We were like, we want to make sure, or just kind of like find something where there's overlap. And what we both had in common was in our human design, we had the fifth line in our profile. So Allie's a 3-5, I'm a 5-2. So we had that shared profile line, and then we started to dig into that a little bit more because we did other names that we threw out there. I don't even remember so any of them, but
Maybe I'll dig them up. They've got to be somewhere.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
definitely in our like planning docs somewhere archived. But I think, and I don't remember what came up, but we started digging into what fifth line, what the five line in human design, really means, and getting to learn that a little bit more. And karmic mirror was one of the terms that really describes that fifth line because the five line is in the projection field, and there is this element of one that we were both under, I think, under the understanding and probably really influenced by someone like Lacey Phillips, who talks about this quite often, that everyone, everything in your life is a mirror to you for your own growth. And that whole theme has continued to evolve. I mean, it transcends the fifth line, but just being our kind of shared element there, it really made sense. And then I think somewhere, I don't know if you were looking it up or I was, I don't even remember, but the term karmic mirror came up and it was like instant. Like that's so it was instantly felt really it landed, it sounded really good, it sounded cool, but also had significance. And I felt like it was really accessible because most people have encountered the word karma in a sense, whether you understand it or whether you subscribe to the belief of karma. But I think most people have heard the word karma and the mirror concept of just like reflecting back to one another, but doing it with intention and being open to receive whatever we are mirrored back. I don't know. I felt like it was like instantly like deep and also accessible at the same time.
Yeah, beautiful. And we were talking before this where it almost was, well, maybe we posted on social that I'd spelled karmic with an H, which goes back to like
That's okay. You have your own spelling sometimes.
listen, this is my shadow of I'm not articulate, I'm not smart, but yet we can still pull things out of there. Now I definitely do know how to spell it, but yes, I think all things, and when you think about this deeper meaning, one thing that I really loved from the onset of partnering with you on this is one, we always really had this intent of working with what works for us, not
Hmm.
with what other podcasters or people say you quote unquote should do. So from just giving each other that space to like learn and grow, and we really were figuring each other out and how we work. And one thing that I thought you did so beautifully early on, which was really thinking about this brand and coming up with our pillars. So while you and I always discussed about what was at the core of this podcast. And while we were like, yes, lots of followers, and we do have dreams of the future, and if we had affiliates and if we had sponsors, like that would all be beautiful. But at the core of it, we were really invested in you put words to our pillars, which were
Hmm.
authentic growth and self-awareness, community and connection, exploring diverse modalities, wellness and self care, and that magic in everyday themes.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what's really cool a year later is to see how there is energy and momentum around these pillars.
Yeah, and I don't think we've ever really discussed the pillars on our podcast ever in an episode. I mean, I've made content around them in the very beginning, but also true to Karmic Mirror is that we've been super intentional about how we do things, what we put out, but we've also just haven't been super concerned about, yeah, the outer metrics like these, and I and like over communicating these pillars. We've just tried to let them organically come through in whatever we put out there and how we interact, like you said, with one another. I love these pillars. I love the authentic growth and self-awareness. Like that's kind of in that just happens so naturally and been this like really cool sort of ebb and flow of what that even means. Like I've been really unpacking what does authenticity even mean because we use it so frequently in this world in wellness and spirituality. And the more and more I connect with what authenticity means to me, the more I realize it's not this like stagnant place that we reach. Like, yes, there is our core essence that is so unique to each person on this earth, but authenticity, like that changes as you grow and you are a different version of yourself with different people. And that doesn't mean that you're being fake. It really is. Like I was thinking about that recently of I was home recently with my family for my mom's birthday and and there is a totally different version of myself that I'm when I am around my sister. And this is what sparked this thought for me was that I kept thinking, yeah, I am very different around them. I'm a little bit louder and I like my laugh changes. I like cackle like instead of my and then I thought that's so authentic to me even though it feels very different than who I am when I'm home or who I am on the podcast, but those all feel like authentic versions of myself. And yes, there are times where we like shapeshift around other people and different environments, but I think yeah, like you get to decide and you get to discern what actually is authentic, and it's not one whole version of yourself like that you present to the world that is authentic, like that shapes and shifts as you evolve or as you enter different spaces. And I think that's something that has come up for me recently, just reflecting on it. Like, yeah, it's very interesting. So I love that being the first pillar of like, yeah, we're here to fuck around and find out and learn and grow in the process without forcing it, like just letting it come through. Um, yeah, the community and connection, like no brainer. That was the whole premise of why we wanted to do this. We were both really clear. Like if we weren't clear on any of the other outer metrics, we were like great to have all those things, nice to have, and also not the point of why we're doing this. The real point was that one, we were super inspired and sparked by Lacey Phillips and the expanded podcast and wanted to emulate the fact that we could listen to her podcast in the early like for however long you and I have been listening to it. And every time she would bring on someone like a guest and say that this is my astrologer, but also my friend. This is my dear friend and human design reader. This is my astrocartographer. And they're all friends and they're all supporting one another in their personal endeavors, but there's this beautiful web of an overlap in their connection and oftentimes in their work, and they promote one another so effortlessly. It was just such it's like just built into the essence of what she does, and I think that spoke to both of us and was like, yes, this is why we're doing a podcast, because we want to grow individually. We want to like put ourselves in this vulnerable space to just be seen, be seen, learning and growing, and to step into our own voices more and flex into what that feels like. But also, like, we want to connect with other people, share resources, share gifts, share talents in a way that feels really generative and not, yeah, not forced. And I
Yeah.
love that.
I'm smiling because we are achieving that. And there's so many
Yeah.
little examples of doing that. And I smile because these were conversations, Michelle, long before you and I even developed this close
Yeah.
of relationship. And before, I mean, we were just sharing these things, and we were solely focused on getting our life coach certification at that point. Like, I don't know about you, but that was a big focus outside of work for me. I wasn't dreaming about starting a podcast, but even as you were
Yeah.
talking, I can remember you and I don't know if it was on the phone or voice notes at this time, but my body lights back up both of our generators where we were just like, I mean, how fucking cool. These are her friends. And like everyone brings
Yeah.
something to the table and then they get to give it out to the universe. And you know, they're just like helping each other do these things for free, but yet they're giving so much value to the world. And so to flash forward to now and see that we have cultivated these relationships with Tess, with Taylor, with Sarah,
Yeah.
with
Kristen,
Kristen, with
Stephanie,
Stephanie. I mean,
more to
we don't want
come.
to leave anybody out and more to come for sure. You know, we are building it, we are doing it. And I am reminded every time that last week I got a message from an acquaintance on social, and she had listened to the Sarah Duncan episode, and
Mm,
she was like, I'm going to go look at Sarah's stuff because I might need hypnotherapy, or I want to look
I love
into what
that.
that is. And whether she does or doesn't, the fact that we have exposed her to different modalities, a different type
Hmm.
of practitioner, I get chills because
Yeah.
that is what's driving, because very three line, you know, I've been exposed to a lot of different practitioners and modalities, and that's what's helped me on my journey. So it feels very rewarding to be able to put that back out into the ethos for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, the pillar of exploring diverse modalities was like a necessary one because we're both super curious. And, there's, like you said, there's a three-line aspect of needing to live the experience in order to learn the wisdom from it. And I think I know that about myself with the manifesting generator, like needing to just like have a little bit of like dabble in different things. And when something isn't working for me any longer, or when I like lose the interest or the excitement or the curiosity, it's like time to pivot and move on to the next thing. And I think both of those aspects, both those qualities, aren't necessarily the norm. I think they're becoming more of the norm, but so often, we're millennials. Like we were raised on like you stick through, you stick with the thing, um and that's just not the case. That's not the way the world is functioning. And it's really, really lovely to be able to explore different modalities and even um, in serious ways, such as in your spirituality and your wellness journey and your health and the way that you take care of yourself, your mind, your body, your soul. Like we always, and when it comes to spirituality, especially, it's like religion teaches you in so many different ways to like really find the thing and stick with it. But not everybody is meant to function in that way. And we have to allow ourselves the permission to try on different things for size. And one of the things in our trailer was like, there is no one size fits all to healing, to growth, to any of this human experience. Like we're all here to experience the things, and the outcome, the expectation of it is totally like it's up to whatever you subscribe to, God, universe, source, all of the things, this one creative source. And the more that people start to show up, the more three lines who show others that you can try the thing and you can fail or you can make mistakes in the way that the world tells you it means fail. Like, actually, there's such beauty in that and there's such necessary wisdom, and that you can try lots of different things and you can get bored and you can move on. And it doesn't mean that you can't stick with anything, it just means you're in the right flow of what you're meant to be doing. And I love that. And I love being able to just like talk to people, be curious, like what is hypnotherapy? What is, Psych K. We didn't really get into that with Kristen, but I know that's something that she is certified in, or Kundalini, or whatever, all the different topics, and just learn about them with a real open mind and curiosity and just present it in that way, which is so much fun to me because I'm the type of person like I need to see what it is. And maybe I take what works for me from that spiritual practice or from that lineage or whatever it is. And and I stick with that. And maybe I don't do the whole shebang, like, and that's okay. That's totally right for me. And so it's been really fun to keep talking to people because they're endless. Like, I always think
I know, I
about,
just got really lit up as I was like, we have
yeah,
so many more topics to
there's
talk
so
about. I'm so
many.
excited about
And
it. Yeah.
and in the day and age of like, which I think we're moving past, and I think we touched on this in the Kristen episode of like, we're moving through, and maybe Jen and Zoe talks a lot about this, I'm not sure, but um, we're moving past this age of the guru, of the expert, right? It's like we had this big boom on, especially on social media, like everyone is an expert in something, and they're going to tell you the right way to whatever it is, right? And remember in the world of coaching, it was like how to make $10,000 in a month, like everyone has their tried and true proven method of getting from A to B, but how do you know like that works for you and that works for the people who are it's meant to work for, but it doesn't work for everyone. We all need to find our own way and we all need to explore that with such curiosity because like yeah, I just always think about trying to fit yourself into this box that is totally crafted for another person. And so it's been super cool to like every time we learn about something new, it's like you get to just decide like, does that resonate with me? Does that excite me? Or does it like just move past me? It's not for me. And that's such a cool thing, which is, only deepens your discernment and your self-trust. And so,
Well, exploring, yeah, the diverse modalities has been so helpful for me on my journey. And I think where we
mhm,
started that was because I mean, you move real quick. You're 5'2", you're man gen, you're meant to. You're meant to be in
yeah,
all of those spaces. And for me as a three line, I know we've talked about this a lot, but I'm going back to like the early stage where I was really into to be magnetic.
yeah,
And and you'd throw things and we always throw things at each other, but I could get very into a place. It's these shoulds. And I think
hmm,
this podcast has really helped us with getting rid of the shoulds and just
yeah,
leaning into our designs because oftentimes I know I'll say to you, I know, but like I'm doing the to be magnetic and it says to do it every day and you do, and follow this way.
yeah.
I can't throw one more modality, especially when I was working in corporate America, getting my coaching degree, still
Hmm.
trying to like mental health. It was as a three line, I couldn't keep throwing all of these things in there.
Hmm.
And just I don't know if it's internal, but the shame that people around you and a lot of projecting, right? You should do this. You should do. Have you thought about that? Have you done that? And while it can be super well intended, just really finding our own voices in that.
Yeah.
And that diverse modality, I think, has been something that allows me to breathe, right? Like
Hmm.
right now, I don't have a to be magnetic subscription. I'm
Hmm.
kind of off of that
Wow,
for
look at
I know, look at me.
you.
I'll be back. I know, and I
Yeah, of
still go
course.
lean into
Right?
the things,
So
but
good.
for me it was helpful to have a structure and to have to do with things
Yeah.
in a certain way. Have to do a things. Look at
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
got to talk on a podcast. I think what's been really cool, what just came up for me is how Source Universe guides have always really kind of continued to give, I'll say for me, and you share if this rings true for you, these gentle, loving signs that we're on the right track. I think one example is we're bi-weekly. That's just what has worked for us. It's not to say that that wouldn't change at some point or it won't change, but we were very intentional about that because we knew we never wanted to feel like rushing, that we were just hitting record to hit record. And so we
Yeah.
always left that open. And there was one point I started telling myself, we should be weekly. That's the next thing. We should be weekly.
Mm,
Started telling myself stories in my head. Michelle probably wants to be weekly. Like, I
mm,
don't know if I can do that right now for all of the reasons. And then when I was at VCon and I was researching some of the panelists and the speakers just ahead of their time slots, I decided to listen to Mona Vans. And her episode, wouldn't you freaking know it, was about how she was changing the frequency of her podcast
mm.
from weekly to monthly because she was
Yeah.
going to dive deeper. And then I ran into Mona Vand in the elevator, and
Yeah.
that was like a big thing. And I just was like, I really needed to hear your podcast. And I just said, I can't get to your podcast once a week. And all things leading up, this isn't a story about how I met Mona Vand. It's about how source guidance gives us these messages through channels that we might not even be aware of. And in that moment, I needed a Mona Vand for whatever reason to say, like, girl, I'm going to once a month because I don't have time to listen either. So I'm going to go once a month. And I've been following Mona on social. She is growing her brand. She is
Yeah.
sponsored by things. And, that takes us back to those lessons of the should. So I think I get a little emotional talking now because we can really look in hindsight how not only the universe has supported us, but certainly your partnership as well through here.
Yeah.
Wellness and self-care have always been at the core of this, and so I think we have to show up for each other that way, and we just do show up for each other that way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we agreed early on. We were like, okay, we'll worry about the numbers when we feel like it. We'll record by, I think it's right by monthly. We drop every 2 weeks, and that feels good. And we, in the beginning, we went through all the lists, like all of the what should you do to start a podcast, because it's really helpful to any new adventure or new venture. It's like you've got to have some sort of template or structure so that you can, for me anyways, have something to respond to. Do I want to follow all of these rules or no? And you get to decide. And we totally did, a lot of when you're starting a podcast, it's like, you choose, make a decision on the length of the podcast. And we were like, okay, we think maybe about an hour. And then some conversations just go over. Most conversations do. And we were back and forth because we have different listening styles, like I would tell you all the time, like, I don't listen to a long podcast in one sitting because that's a long time to be committed to a conversation. If a podcast is an hour long or longer, I'm probably going to listen to 30 minutes and then move on when like my attention, true to my own manifesting generator qualities, like, and then I'll come back to it when I feel called to come back to it. And if it's the right episode for me, whatever I'm listening to, I'll come back to it. I will. But, and we listen very differently to podcasts. So we were like, what should we do? And then it just happened organically. We just thought like, okay, some of our episodes could be considered long, but whoever's going to listen to it is going to listen to it and we'll be good with that. And that's perfectly right. And so I really love that. And the last pillar, magic and everyday themes. I think that's like such a fun like given of yeah, and goes back to what I was saying before we started recording is just like being super open, and that's part of the experience, right? When you are not so focused on trying to control the outcome of everything, you can just show up and be present to what is actually there and be open, and that is how you start to see, like you said, the little ways that universe or I mean that source guides you or nudges you, right? Or you would call them maybe synchronicities, of all of the ways that, nothing is coincidence in life. If that's your belief, that's my belief. So when things show up as synchronicity, like seeing Mona Van in the elevator and her just giving you that message that like, yes, like almost like by allowing herself permission to change the frequency, without fear of losing all of the things, right? It gave you a little bit more ease to be like, okay, I am on the right track because I don't need to focus on on so much on the frequency and just focus on the quality of it and focus on my own intention and how I show up in the podcast and let that be enough. And I think that's just how we keep ourselves open to see the magic in everyday themes because it is everywhere you look. And I think we don't, I don't know, people talk about it, but there's such beauty in everything. It's like when you start a gratitude list, right? It's like this evolution, right? You start writing the gratitudes and you're building a habit and you're like, okay, but you're training your mind to look for the good. And then it becomes a habit. And then the more you deepen into it, it becomes a way of life. And so you wake up in the morning and you feel the gratitude, like it just shifts in the way that you see the magic and the gratitude in everyday life. You step outside and you hear the birds, and you're like instantly in that place of awe and connection to something bigger than yourself. And I think those are the little everyday moments that you make yourself more open and receptive to when you intentionally go into something like this.
Yeah. Well, I think the magic in everyday themes, what initially pops up for me is that derives so much, I think, from the origin of our voice notes. Because
Yeah.
a lot of times, I mean, our voice notes run the gambit of themes, but a lot of times it's those, oh my goodness, this just happened to me right now, or can you believe this?
Mm.
And having you on the other end and me on the other end for you, of us just literally talking through real life things going in on in our days. And then that really karmic mirror element of being able to support each other. I don't think it was an accident that we met in coaching, because we started our relationships coaching each other. So getting deep, asking the questions, building trust, pulling out those themes. And that is what we hope to bring to the Karmic Mirror community as well, is to see, and not in an overwhelming way, but that there is magic in everyday themes. And even if it looks as if, I'll just throw these words out there, heavy, frustrating, whatever those might be, that is magic if we can get to the root of it, and if we can be authentic and give ourselves what we need. And that's what we try to put out in the podcast. And I have seen, the more and more we go on, Michelle, I think the more organically you and I do speak to our truths and throw out those examples as well.
Yeah.
One of the things about this podcast, because we reflect back, and I was looking through old images and videos of when we first hit record, is that, I mean, we were in your office space upstairs recording on a computer and still working through, how are we going to edit this? What does it sound like? And now we're in a pretty solid flow. I mean, we got mics, so that must make us
We got
official.
mics.
We got mics,
Uh-huh.
official. Uh, and that just feels really, really cool. I'm really
Yeah.
proud to see the growth in that. And I had something else. I lost it. In your words, open head, open ajna. I'm sure it'll come back if it's
Yeah.
meant to.
Toby and Layla want to join the conversation as always from the beginning.
I mean,
Um,
they are welcome.
my dogs. Okay, so I have some questions.
Yeah.
Not too many. Um, so what have you maybe healed or grown through as a host, as a co-host of this podcast? Sorry, I threw that one at you, but you can throw it
Yeah.
right back to me if you don't have anything yet.
So if I'm getting the question right, like where do I personally think I've grown or healed?
Yeah, where do you feel like you've healed or grown through as a host?
Yeah, as a host, I think, and maybe this feels very obvious, but taking up space, I think,
Yeah.
and this would be an internal one that maybe listeners might not know unless I shared with them and we talk about it. Well, you would know if you listen to all of our podcasts because
We're like, so
we
go listen to a year's
so
worth
go
of
so
podcasts.
go listen to it. Is that this piece of, especially I think with having a co-host, and then especially when we bring guests on, it's this piece of, where do I get a say? Should I be speaking? Oh no, I'm taking other people's spotlight. This is about them. It should be about me. Am I cutting them
Mhm.
off? It was a lot about what the people on the other end of the recording are thinking about me or how I might be perceived. And ultimately, what that comes down to is this fear of being seen and being heard. And that is the bigger area that I've really been focusing on and that Karmic Mirror has helped me with. But I would say, as a host, now internally, I'm feeling a little more in the flow with it. It
Mm,
still pops up because those will still be things of, whoops, did I interrupt her? Did I make her lose a train of thought? It's very this people pleasing. But when I come from a space of, no, this is your fucking podcast too. And
mm,
you and Michelle share it, and you get space, and she gets space, and everybody gets space, then we really create some beautiful things. I was listening to the Kristen episode, and maybe because it was more recent, but I was really listening to that, just smiling and getting chills because there was this other piece that we always really wanted it to feel as if it was just friends sitting around having these conversations. And that was a real moment where I could feel myself being so present. And now we need someone as we're recording to be looking at timestamps, and yes, it's important that everybody gets equal say and those things. But what I realized is that I wasn't able to tap into as much of my authenticity and things being channeled through me when I was so worried about the people pleasing and what
mm.
everyone was going to think about how I showed up. And
Yeah.
that includes not only you, Michelle, not only our guests, but anyone who might be listening. That's how far that kind of stretched. And this process, I think, has really helped me grow. And again, it's a lot because we've opened up to this community that also is like, no, you get a voice, you get a voice, we all get a voice. What about you? Let me turn that back on you. What comes up for you?
Yeah, there's been so many different themes that have come up, and I think more than anything, showing up and speaking has been a real practice in and just like really, really leaning into my voice in different ways and letting it be whatever it is that day and just trusting myself. I think it's almost been like this beautiful primer for how I do self-expression in this phase of life because I've gone through so many different phases, right? Like these deaths and rebirths, right? In different versions of myself, all me, all different layers. But I think prior to Karmic Mirror, I was in this kind of like a little bit of a plateau, and that's okay. That happens, right? Like everything, growth isn't linear. And oftentimes we plateau in a sense, and I think I was getting really I don't think burnt out. I think burnt out maybe is a little more extreme than what I really felt, but I was really disillusioned with social media and and all that comes with that, like just all of the regurgitating, all of there was so much, and I guess to give that a little bit more context, it's like we started the coaching program, right? And that was a big shift in my life because I was going from being in one working industry in beauty and running teams for so long, where I was in my element in so many ways because it's a world that I knew and I was really confident. I could get up in front of every single day. There were tons of people. I mean, we had big teams in the all of the places that I worked in, and I am very charismatic in those spaces. I'm very confident, and I could just speak off the cuff really easily. That's innate to who I am also, but then going into coaching and holistic nutrition and all of this whole world of healing and whether it was Kundalini or manifestation or all of those things that tie up kind of tie into each other in a lot of ways. And all of a sudden it was like, started coaching, and then it was like that excitement of something new and just wanting to throw whatever at the wall and see what sticks. And I felt really excited about it for a time. I was making videos on Instagram. I was like sharing tips and stuff all the time. And then I reached that plateau where I was like, this isn't very, that manifesting generator perhaps as well, of like, I'm not feeling the excitement. I'm not feeling inspired by any of this. And then what so frequently happens after is like, if you don't move into something different or try the next thing or whatever it is, for me, anyways, I have that two line, that hermit. And so I was like in my hermit mode big time. I moved to a new town. We bought a house and my life changed because I was more like I was in the community that I live in more. I was doing
think
things
it's
and
also good to note that when we did our coaching certification, that was COVID. So life had
yeah,
all changed as well. I just kind of want to add that because there was a
yeah,
little bit of isolation and seclusion for the
yeah.
world at
For the
that time as
world,
well. Yeah. So going through big
yeah,
stuff.
but I didn't feel isolated or secluded during COVID. I felt really sorry, I know a lot of people did, but I felt really in that space. I was really inspired and I was really excited because I was doing new things. I was like trying
Yeah.
everything because it was the first time in a very, very long time that I was like, oh, the world is my oyster in a sense because I was taking a coaching program. I was doing holistic nutritionist. I was doing a new form of, Kundalini at the time. I was doing all these things and I was really healing a lot of these things that in my past life, I was just too busy to give it time. And now I had all this space to like actually get to know myself even deeper. And it was exciting and it was fun. And then like I said, like this plateau hit where I was in this new space and all of a sudden I was like, okay, what's next? Like, and it almost like I got really, really comfortable in my hermit mode. I can get really comfortable in that space. I'm so happy to be alone sometimes. And I'm really comfortable in my own energy. But what was happening was then I was like, feeling nervous all of a sudden, or not nervous, but I wasn't as confident for a while. I was like, wait, now what do I do? I don't want to be making reels. I don't care about like voicing over the next trending original audio. Like, I don't give a shit about any of that stuff actually. And if there's so many billions of people saying the same thing online and we have these little bubbles where everybody's just repeating back, it was a very like it just put me further into this little hermit cocoon longer than I needed to be in. And so, we've talked a lot on the podcast about what accountability really looks like. And there's so many different ways that that shows up, but there is a level of doing something with another person that you're like, okay, I'm locked in. I agreed to do this and I'm just going to show up. And so every time we recorded, it was like this, like stepping more into my voice, even when I felt like maybe I didn't make sense, or then, like, and getting in such a flow of just recording on this, every 2 weeks, having something come out. And when you do that, when you're like riding this wave, you really don't have so much space to critique and judge yourself because it's just coming through. And so when I say like healing and grown through, like leaning more into my voice, that's been the journey for me because it's just trickled into other areas. Because now it's like, it's your voice, but it's discernment. Like, I don't have to feel pressure to do those things. And I actually don't even need to feel like I don't like the negativity of like, well, I don't want to be doing those things. It's like, actually, well, we've carved out our own little space here to just
Mhm.
share and speak and let that be enough. And if it lands for you, if it resonates, that's beautiful. And if it doesn't, that's cool too, because that's it. Like we're doing this purely as a practice in devotion to your self-expression and a practice in devotion to your own voice in the ways that it shows up. And some days, like I always say, like, I am woman, right? Like I love to say that there's those sayings, but truly, like my hormones fluctuate. our hormones fluctuate, right? The moon transits, there are transits of all the planets, like where all of these things are constantly in flux and they're moving. And so to think that this one version of yourself that is polished and perfect and makes sense and is eloquent and sounds smart, like I may get that version of myself once or twice a month, and that's a beautiful thing, but that doesn't take away from all the different ways that I show up. And so doing this has really been this beautiful practice in just like allowing yourself to grow through. I think this is a saying also. So sorry, I'm coming with all the sayings today, right? But that saying of like grow through what you go through, I think that's a saying. But that's truly it, right? Like once you're on the ride, like once you're riding the wave, and that's what happens when you have accountability, whether it's a collaborative partnership, whether you hire someone to work with you, whether it's your relationships in your life, when you make that commitment to show up for something, it's literally you're like, okay, I've just got to like buckle up and show up however I am, like come as you are. Fourth saying of the episode. I don't know if I've got any more in me, but I probably do.
Yeah.
Come as you are.
And
But that's, yeah,
it is like what comes up when you're talking about this is I think to highlight that we both have our sun signs in our seventh house. And that was something
yeah,
early on too of committed partnership. What that means is that a lot of times in life, so our sun signs are both in our seventh house. And what that means is that committed partnerships are going to play a large role in our lives, or we should lean into that. How would you articulate that?
yeah. Well, your sun sign, this is how you shine. It's the sun. And so when I think of my seventh house and committed partnerships, that applies to people you work with in committed partnerships. That's people you are in platonic friendships and committed partnerships, in romantic. It could be any of those things, but that is really, for how I interpret it, is where I come alive, where I really shine. And I notice that, like, in the right partnerships, I feel like I get to shine. And I'm a Leo. Like, what is more lovely than feeling like you are shining and being supported in committed partnerships? And so I think, it's like, rather than being like, let's start or I'm going to start a podcast on my own, I needed this partnership to be able to have that, like, okay, I showed, the accountability of like, I showed up, committed partnership. I committed to this thing. Now
Yeah.
we're in it. We did all the things, laid the groundwork for it. And now I can just, all of that, I can set down and I can just show up and be myself and whatever that looks like.
That was like a really cool kismet synchronicity between you
Yeah.
and I of our placements as well as having opposing sun and rising signs. It just really allows us to do that. And I think there was one time where I might have left you a voice note just in gratitude saying, I just am so appreciative to be on this journey with you because I would have
Hmm.
never done this if it wasn't for you. And I
Yeah.
think you responded and you said, girl, same. Like
Yeah, yeah.
seventh house, like we needed this partnership. And I don't know if you got around to it. I almost feel as though you were meant to not hear all of these messages leading up to this episode so we could save them for here. But I had, when I was reflecting on this episode, because I like to prep a little bit beforehand, this thing just channeled through me and I had to pick up my pen and I just jotted it down and I think I sent you what I had wrote down that it just said like karmic mirror brought me back to life. And I
Mm.
know it's just a podcast, but encompassing all of these things that you said, it really does run that deep for me.
Yeah.
We decided to start this podcast, and you think about all of these deep things of partnerships and all of these lessons that I needed to learn. I didn't need to learn that I got to learn because it'll help me live my highest good. But the thought of we were ready to launch a year before, like we really
Hmm.
were. And I got my world shattered, my
Hmm.
heart crushed, extreme grief. And to be able to just come to you and say, like, this ain't happening now, right? And
Yeah.
could you imagine if we showed up when I was in that state to try and hit
Yeah.
record? I don't know where we would have been, but
Yeah.
I think the overall thing is just time and time again, to piggyback on what you were saying, is to have this partnership and this relationship, to show up authentically yourself, to be like, I'm not fucking feeling recording today. And to have that space, to have partners to say, then we're not recording today. How does this impact what we're doing? When I say Karmic Mirror brought me back to life, in a lot of ways it did, because it allowed me this space. And of course, through you, and to show up broken, to show up,
Mm-hmm.
with all of my fears, to show up cranky, but also on the other side, to show up like elated and lit
Yeah.
up, and to be able to throw out ideas, to have safe spaces to do that. All of these stories you can tell yourself. I'm not creative. I don't have good ideas. Again, that voice thing. I needed to find a voice and where I fit in. And I still work on that.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a big process, and I just want to love on you a little bit, because I don't know with any
Yeah.
other partner that I would be here, or this would have been out there. And Karmic Mirror is like the one thing in my life that when I show up, I know that's that juicy generator energy.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just know it. I can't explain it, but when I'm working on things, like even right now, I'm getting chills up and down my body,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't know what the future holds, but I do know that this has been a beautiful container, and I hope by us being transparent really can help others, right? If you're having a thought of, I want to do the thing,
Mm-hmm.
you can do the thing. It may not look like what everybody else thinks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think for me, a lot of those blocks were like, oh, do we have to? And we don't have ourselves on camera yet. But that was a big thing. Like in the
Yeah.
beginning, I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to be able every other week to get myself together to feel good enough to be on camera. That was just at the time, and
Totally.
we might evolve through that. But I think what our relationship has helped me do is see that there's relationships out there that the highest good is not a tangible, monetary, self-serving outcome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I also think that in, and I say the words the right partnerships a lot because I really am, that's coming up so much for me in my life. But the right partnerships, the right friendships, the right connections for you, that doesn't mean there's right and wrong, but for you, um, they really hit different, right? I think about what you sparked up for me is that we're mirroring so much of our own healing that's still left to do, as so often happens in relationships. Karmic mirror, hello. But also that, um, gosh, how do I find the words? I never felt the need or the urge to change how I show up to accommodate how you feel. Does that make sense? Because it sounds cold how I'm saying it. But what I mean is that as you're healing and you're going through your things, right? I can show up for you, but I can show up as exactly who I am. I don't need to be like a different version. And I say this, and at the same time, there are like what shadow aspects come up for me in that is like, oh, you should change. You should be more
Mm.
nurturing. You should be more vocal in how you express yourself with Allie. And then I'm like, but also, what am I doing? If I change how I act, then I'm not really mirroring back what she was meant to see and vice versa, right? Like there are going to be times, and this has happened through the course of recording, right? It's like there are instances, like you've said, where you've been like, oh, am I doing this too much? Am I cutting her off or whatever it is, right? And if I were like, no, 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 it's okay, don't worry about it, then you don't have the chance to reflect on what that feels like for you and then discern that, like, am I picking up on her or is it just me? And is it, like, and vice versa. Like, I can work through my own shit without having to feel like you need to shapeshift to like accommodate how I'm feeling. I can just do that on my own. Does that make sense? Like, because
It makes sense.
it feels very, and this is my shadow too, is that like often will feel like, oh, are you being cold? Or not cold, but too objective in some ways or too removed. And I know that's not the case, but again, the more that I let this happen and like let myself and be like, you know what? I think something that you and I always come back to is that we'll say something and then we'll be like, but I know that's not the case, right? You'll be like, oh, I was thinking, like, you'll say this, you'll say, like, oh, there's a story I'm telling myself, but I know that Michelle's just being Michelle, like, right? And I'll use the example of like, I sometimes like, you were talking about messages that I didn't hear. And I was like, before I jumped on today's recording, I was like, there's like a couple voice notes that I have not listened to from you. And I trusted because we've built this friendship that I can show up today knowing like I'm going to see her today. We're going to talk and I can go back and I can listen later, but I don't have to feel this pressure to be like, you have to respond now, or she's going to feel a certain way because we've gotten to know each other and know without having to change how we show up. And whether that is right or wrong to someone else, it's how we have functioned. And it's also how we've had our own like parallel healing and growth that while there's so much that intertwines just working together, we've done it on or we've done it alongside each other, like individually. And I think it opens the way for when you get, and I'm not saying you, I'm saying you just as a term, not you, Hallie, but
And
when
it's okay if it
people,
is me.
no, 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 but like just people in general, right? Like me,
Yeah.
we, um, when we get activated or emotionally charged, or even deeper, when someone is triggered by another person's response or how they show up or anything or how they're just being, you can respond in so many different ways. You can be triggered and you can let that be a thing. But I think and I feel that over the course of of just doing this together as friends, as working partners, um, it's opened the way for feeling the activation, feeling perhaps even the trigger of something, and letting that like open up something for us and bloom and heal versus reacting and making it a story, right? The story still exists sometimes because we're human. But instead of spiraling into it and being like, Michelle, or Allie's gonna think I'm like this cold-hearted bitch because I'm not, blah, 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 blah. I can be like, okay, why do I feel that way? What does that say about what's going on for me? Right? I don't have to make it about you, and you don't have to change anything. I can take that and I can process it, or I can put it on the back. I could do whatever I want with it, right? But the point is that like we're not overly like validating based on our own projections, if that makes any sense at all.
It does. I think at the root of it, I talk about this a lot, is that when you assume positive intent, that can be really helpful. And I
Mm,
think you and I built this trust early on, and I really assumed
yeah.
positive intent. And we know we're different, right? If you just
Yeah.
look at our charts, I mean, Leo sun, Aquarius rising, Pisces sun, Virgo rising, those could just like themselves be so different,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm emotional in human design. You're non-emotional.
Yeah.
I'm an emotional authority. There just are these organic ways. But what I think has been beautiful, because you're not wrong, that when you see somebody who reacts different, it is very easy to say, oh, that's a better way of being, or I
Yeah.
should be more like that. So how that might play out in my mind, let's just play it out, is, for you, you're like, oh, I'm just a cold-hearted bitch, and why don't I have emotions? Well, whatever. And maybe I would be over here being like, I can't be as emotional be with her because
Mm.
she's not receptive. All of these stories
Yeah.
we can tell ourselves, but our power really comes, and I really love our connection. Our power comes from being diverse,
Yeah.
from me having an emotional authority, from you not, from
Yeah.
you being able to witness how I show up in life, for me being able to witness how you show up in life. And it's been really, really healing. Might I bring up the example of when we were recording and had to stop? Because it was frustrated. You were
Oh
frustrated. Do
yeah,
you remember?
that was a fun. Oh, yes, bring it up because I think it also perfectly articulates the way that you and I approach maybe conflict or disagreement. Like I'm very much like I'm very comfortable with it in a sense. I mean, hello, my fight or flight response is to fight. And not fight because we never
And
fought.
mine is to freeze and fawn.
Exactly.
But then
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
start to see that this isn't just about us, it's about how we show up. And you're going to have a perception of this. And it might be a little bit differently than me, but if you don't mind, I'll start and then you share your 2 cents in is that I can't even at this point remember what the
Me
topic was,
either.
but at some point we're recording. I'd be lying if I didn't sense there was like energy going on, but at that time I think I was like, is this just my energy I'm putting off on? I don't know. We can tell ourselves a lot of stories. And at some point, Michelle just stopped and said, I'm really frustrated right now.
Hmm.
And I know because I know Michelle, frustration is a not self theme in human design. And so at that point, we had worked together enough and I'd done my own work that I was like, this isn't about me right now. I just know this is frustrating. So it's like, this isn't going to serve anyone to keep hitting record and keep recording. So, like, that solved it in the minute. We both kind of went away. And I know we had our like own processing. And, some of the stories I was telling myself is like, oh my gosh, what did I do to piss her off? What did I do? What could I have done differently?
Yeah.
All of these things. Ultimately, I could lose my voice in that process.
Yeah.
But you don't know that to be true. You don't know what she was frustrated about. What's triggering this for you? And it really was like that people pleasing. It was that feeling like I was letting someone else down, feeling as if I had done something wrong. All stories that I was telling myself.
Yeah.
And where I was able to get to is, I mean, it's going to come up and let's see how it comes up. And as always, being open. If I did do something like, if you did do something, this is a great opportunity to be able to talk and come together about how we avoid this in the future. And so I tried to approach it like that. I'll let
Hmm.
you kind of speak before we come back together of like how we came together. But what do you recall about that time? Because we did come together the next week and it was fine and we talked and I remember that. But what
Yeah.
comes up for you?
I don't remember a ton. I don't even remember what we were recording, but I think whatever way I showed up that day, I think I was a little more tender. And so twofold, right? I think I came back and I told you about how my dad would talk over me and interrupt me. And I'm getting emotional because it was a big moving through something because there's two folds, right? Like I was a little bit tender and I was frustrated because I kept losing my thoughts. And and then that hits on the button of like not sounding smart or articulate enough because I would lose my thought. And and so it was really frustrating for me. And then when I kind of like sat with it, I was like, yeah, like I think I journaled about it as always. And it brought me back to all of the times where growing up, people would be like, you're so shy, you're so quiet. And I never felt shy and I never felt quiet, but so many people told me that I was. And part of the main reason why was because my dad always talked over me and never let me get a word in and would talk for me. And then when I would start to talk, he would interrupt me. And then I would just get so frustrated because I'd be like, well, why the hell am I even here? Like, and I'm like a kid, right? Being like, well, what the hell? I guess I don't have anything to say because this guy's going to just tell everything for me or he's going to suck all the air out of the room, right? And that's my story. You've never met this guy. That's my story. That's my experience from, and part of the growing and the what I really desired out of the situation, what I truly desire is to be able to move through that, to be cut off sometime, right? In like an understandable way, right? Conversations
Share,
happen.
just share organically. It doesn't matter. Maybe I was
Yeah.
overly interrupting. Who cares? Like, that is besides the point
Yeah.
because that was the trigger to dive deeper into. But it sounds like what you're doing is processing when this comes up again, not if, because that's
Yeah.
life,
So I
right?
was basically saying is that what I want is to be able to have these conversations where I don't get thrown so far off track and I don't get so upset when I'm like being, cut off in the middle of a thought because there isn't a part of me that does like when that happens, I like it goes out my mind. And then I'm like, well, now I have nothing to say because I can't remember what I said because all I can think about is being cut off and all I can think about is what you're saying. And it was really upsetting to me. And because it dredged up all of these old things that still are very present, not necessarily the experience because it doesn't really happen so often, but there is the reality of I put myself out here to do a podcast with another person. And we don't have a little light that goes off that says it's your time to talk and it's your time. And you are more animated and you do jump in more frequently because that's how you function. And so when I talk about not having to change who you are, there is an element of being more aware of like, how I function that like I may lose a thought and then it kind of like might derail me, but I'm also working through that in a sense that like I want to be able to hone my skills in speaking to be able to like I may not be able to hold on to that thought and grasp it. It may come back to me, but also I want to be able to not get so thrown off and be able to like just rebalance and be like, okay, it happened. Now what? It's okay. The thought will come back to you if it really matters. And so I'm not there yet fully, but it was an interesting thing to come to because, and I don't necessarily like for me, I don't, um, avoiding it is not necessarily important to me because I think that sometimes conflict and tension is the way through things. Because look at what it sparked for me was less about the experience in the moment and more about what do I really desire for myself? And it's to be able to like just be able to move through that, right? Because that's part of life. It happens. And so it is a deeper learning to kind of like unearth these like layers of desires. Like when I was a kid, right? This is healing 101. When I was a child, I was cut off speaking so frequently. I was talked over so much that it created this persona that I never wanted to be. I never wanted to be shy or soft spoken. I actually have a lot to say. I'm a super chatty Cathy and I'm not shy. I'm just really observant about and discerning about who and where I share my energy and my thoughts with. And it's not with everyone. And if I don't feel called to share my energy with people, I don't. And it may come off as shy, but it's just that I don't fucks with you. um, but
Yeah.
and so when we can do this, when we can say it's not your fault, you didn't do anything wrong, then I can put it back on myself and say, like, actually, what is my inner child, what is little Michelle actually really, really crave and need and desire right now? Maybe it's to be heard, but more so it's to like be able to just move through that. It's to be able to be like, okay, and blah, 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 whatever, right? Like, and to not get
Yeah.
knocked off by that. Like, that's what I want to not be, to feel an emotional charge from it. I mean, I will always, but to not feel derailed, to feel like, okay, and to continue going through. And I think that in a lot of times, what I see in everyday conversations, I mean, I'm married of Aries with like all this hardcore Aries and Capricorn placements. And so I married someone who does just will jump right in and but in different ways.
Yeah.
But when I observe other people talking, what I see in front of me in a lot of spaces is that when people get interrupted or talked over, they feel the need to then talk louder and interrupt more. And in my like lower frequency or in my shadow or out of ego, I might even reach for that. Not often, but I can instantly feel that when I feel the need to be like, oh no, I need to be louder and talk more. And that feels very out of alignment for me. That doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right to do that. And so I noticed, I think I was getting frustrated too, because I was noticing that I would be like, okay, let me talk louder or let me try to interrupt, and I'm like, that's not who I am either.
What was beautiful at the outcome of that is Well, it's almost, it was like the opposite, which is so interesting with like our childhood wounds. And what comes up is that for me, it's never feeling like I have permission to take space, never
Hmm.
feeling like, so while you feel like you get louder and you could like feel that about yourself, I can almost in those moments feel myself like
Hmm.
concaving in and then just I won't talk. I won't say anything. I'll just
Hmm.
sit. And again, that's not conducive to a co-host
Yeah,
podcast, right?
yeah. Well, and also you were in a space, or we've cultivated a space where you can take up space and you can speak when you feel the urge and the animated, right? And so if I were to react and start to try to talk over you, right? Then that doesn't serve the purpose of allowing ourselves to show up as we are and
Hmm.
to do our own work, even despite feeling activated in the moment.
Yeah,
And what I think is maybe most profound in this particular experience is that you can um, demonstrate for yourself what it means to disagree or to be uncomfortable in partnership and not make it a thing. Like, let that be okay too, because you can't just accept all the happy go lucky or all the times where we're deep in our emotions and we're caring for another or whatever that is. Sometimes you have to accept all of the, like, you don't have to, but we committed to this, right? We with that intention of like, I'm going to trust that I'm going to trust myself enough to know that, like, I committed to this for a reason, and I'm going to trust that you get to be who you are, I get to be me, and we're not going to run away from each other, and we're going to still show
I
up.
do.
We're married, okay?
We're married, okay? For life. Life is. And I think in that moment too, what's really interesting is as you share that, what was coming up for me is my biggest shadow is, well, one, not having a voice and is just being abandoned and left.
Hmm.
So in that interim, you're doing your work and I'm, doing my work of what was being triggered. And it was because it was like, oh, you've pissed her off. She's going to want nothing to do with you again. Goodbye, Karmic Mirror. And
Hmm.
again, that's my work.
Yeah.
That's not your work. You didn't give me any indication or say anything that that might be true. And like, could it be true? Maybe. Who knows? But it was like working on that. And then when we came back together and we didn't skirt it. We didn't spend hours talking
Yeah.
about it, but you shared about what was going on underneath with your dad and I could have so much empathy and be like, yeah, I get it. And then I think I shared with you that I just, had felt, did I upset her? Is she not going
Yeah.
to want to continue? But that was on me. And I think just having that acknowledgement, I'll speak personally, I can show up. My work is you don't lose your space. You
Hmm.
don't silence yourself and pull back. But you know this about Michelle. And so, why would you, people that you love and care about, why would you not want to help support them?
Hmm.
And so, I've tried to always communicate to you, yeah, I'm still trying to figure out this balance of I do want you to flow. I want you to have your space. And sometimes I'm feeling called to ask or for clarifying. And
Hmm.
at least for me, it makes me feel like we can get in more flow.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think also talking to Sarah, right? Like we get to bring in all of these people where Sarah's like, no, Allie, your three line, when it's you and I, Michelle, on our podcast, I am meant to pull out this two line in you. And I am meant to like
Hmm.
pull in. But that's where we get to figure out our ebbs and flows so that it's for everyone's highest good. And listen, we're going to have off days. People
Yeah.
annoy each other. That's just
A thousand
going to be the
percent.
thing. But if it's love and respect at its core and honesty and well intended, I think that's why we've been able to
Yeah,
thrive
yeah.
because we do say what we need. We
Yeah.
do.
Well, and that's the whole mirror aspect, right? Like, when you start to accept that everything and everyone in your life is a mirror in some way, shape, or form, that doesn't mean like, literally in every aspect, but if you are open to it, um, so much can be revealed to you if you so choose to do this, to heal, to grow, whatever it is that you're doing. And I guess at its core, if you agree to look inward, and every time you experience something uncomfortable or someone activates something in you that feels like discomfort or that dredges up fear or shame or feelings, anything of discomfort, if you allow yourself to be open to go inward and not immediately reach for the outward of what did this other person do, but instead turn it inward of what is this saying about what's coming up for me. So much gold, all the gold, right? Like how many issues in the world would be solved if we could learn to do that more and more, right? And like I said, it's like you sign up for it. We agreed to do this podcast. So I signed up for this and I signed up to be activated on my stuff that still needs a little bit of air and needs healing and needs to be seen. And I don't get to put the blame on anyone else, even though a lot of those stories and those deep hurts or even traumas, whether big T, little t, whatever they are, even though they may be caused by someone else in our life, and it's like layered into how we show up as adults, I don't get to put the blame on anyone else that triggers or activates something within me. I don't even get to put the blame on myself. I get to just be curious and open to understand what is that saying and what am I looking for? What do I really need here, right? Like what do I really need? And and let that be the lesson or the growth or the healing. And it really is, it's so beautiful to let that happen because, so often people want to run away from the discomfort. And I brought up the confrontation piece because we do handle confrontation so differently. Everyone does, and we all based on our own experiences. And so there is a part of me that is really, really comfortable with some level of confrontation in a really healthy way.
Well,
And
confrontation is healthy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
The right kind of like,
yeah,
yeah, the healthy
yeah.
expression
And
of
you
it.
don't approach it with an aggressive manner, is
Yeah,
not
yeah.
interpret how you approach conflict. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and it's like, and I don't always approach it, like in the best way. Sometimes it just blurts out,
Yeah.
um, but all of it is okay, right? Like I'm not, and so anyways, that was really fascinating. Which like my one question, go ahead.
Oh, no, it just brings it all. Yeah, the one question brings us into deeper thought. Is that what you're gonna
No, no, no.
say?
Well,
Yeah.
well, I had a question, but I think we just really talked about it, right? My question was,
Okay.
what's changed in how you listen to people, to others, and to yourself and to life? And I think we kind of answered it in so many
Oh,
ways
yeah.
because that was my question, but we really went there anyways.
Yeah. And I wanted to bring it back full circle because as you see this journey of like the building blocks and as a three line, the way Taylor Gruey explained it in a recent podcast on a line is that three lines, it's almost like these building blocks. You get
Hmm.
building, building, building blocks until one day it's just, oh, okay, I get it. And so for this one example, Michelle, right? Think about how you showed up. And then I can't even remember which episode it was a couple weeks ago that you always say open head, open ajna
Uh-huh.
also. So I was thinking about you too, where you're like, I really hate it when I like lose my train of thought or I like
Yeah.
lose it. Then there's also this open head, open ajna, which I also have. And so we were recording a couple of weeks ago, and I think I lost my train of thought. And as you were explaining it, I went back to that spot and I was feeling, and it was that I had something I was saying and it was going to make a point. Probably just like different root cause, but same thing to you. And because you and I had journeyed together, and because you were so authentic and honest about your root cause, in that moment, even though I felt the energy like here, I just literally in my head, I was like, open head, open ajna. This doesn't even have to be about you're triggered because someone cut you off. Literally, like maybe it just left because it's
Yeah.
open head, open ajna. And that's not what the listeners were meant to hear right now. And if it's, I think you were like, that's okay, it'll come back if it comes back. But I bring that full circle because those conversations are the building blocks. And like three line, when I experienced the exact same emotions you experienced, now albeit the root is my own and I own
Mhm.
that. But having you have shown me, like that's very three line, you showing me how you worked through it. I literally super quick went from like to just
Yeah. Yeah.
like let's keep rolling and I could get more present. And so I just like to throw that out there because I think when we try to avoid quote unquote conflict, and let's not forget, like the best relationships have the healthiest conflict because it's not if conflict arises, it's when, because we're all different, unique people, and our perceptions and perspectives of what happened are vastly different. We'll never understand. Like, I'll never understand what you're going through in your mind and your body and just allowing the transparency, how that helps with our full growth.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about just favorite memorable. Let's get lighter a little bit. I know we have done all the deep work and maybe we reflect a little bit more another time, but just memorable, like what it stands out for you. I don't know whether the whole last process or just the last year of really hitting record. What are some highlights, key memorable moments, ahas for you?
Hmm. I don't know if there's any like key moments. I think one really cool, I wouldn't say memorable, but something that stands out is just how interconnected everything is in the sense that our guests have come through so many of the similar portals. For example, I have somebody working on something in my mudroom right now. Um, for example, how many of our guests, right, you could trace back to where we connected, whether it was through the Benshun community of people like Stephanie and Kristen, hi, and or people like the Lacey Phillips podcast, right? Like I think of all of these connecting lines in this world and it's so cool to think about how many people and places have come from the same sources, like, or we've talked to guests and it's like our journeys have been parallel. Like they started doing manifestation work around the same time that you or I got put onto it, and this beautiful ripple effect that happens that connects us all. As you mentioned a couple of times, we met in our coaching program and I got put onto like Lacey Phillips, and I think I put you onto her, but you were listening to Mark Groves. Yeah, so just how everything is so connected. Like there is this beautiful golden thread through everything that has connected us to people, to resources, to inspiration. But so I don't have one moment or interview or theme. I love them all in different ways, even when it's like when we have guests who, this has happened a couple times where we have guests and like they're talking and I'm looking at you like point like we just talked about this. And so I love things like that. I love those moments. But what about you? Any moments, episodes, interviews, themes that stand out for you?
I love the interwovenness. I was getting chills a little bit. And the more and more we expand our community, it's all of these synchronicities and these clicks and these ahas that feel really memorable to me. And when I say Karmic Mirror brought me back to life, these are the memorable things of, yes, that little joke of you looking at me. Like I'll always remember that, like looking at me when we have guests of, oh, this theme feels like it's for you.
Yeah.
And looking back, Michelle, I get a little emotional and I get a little tingly because I can look back in hindsight at all of these things and really think about how Source has just influxed us and like blessed us with all of these resources, themes that have really helped us in our healing. And we did it our way, not not to get like very New York, you know, I
Yeah.
did it my way. And we did do it our way. And we paid attention to those synchronicities. And that feels really memorable. I would have to say, I mean, obviously VCon was a big one for me just in this
Oh
process. I would
yeah,
have to
for
say
sure.
just high level. And we have a whole episode on that if you want to hear about that experience. But I think why that was so memorable to me is because it literally gave me access to one-on-one conversations with thought-provoking coaches, leaders, spiritual gurus in that space, some of who had really taught me. You know, I really kind of idolized, for lack of a better word, because they helped me feel really seen and changed my life. And that all happens because of Karmic Mirror,
Yeah.
because we have this podcast. And even without 100,000 followers, I still got a media pass to go to VCon to get access to these people. And that's a personal journey for me. I think why I would want to highlight that as more memorable, because that experience for me, I think, was another big boost to my confidence
Yeah.
to, oh, we're on the right space. I don't know where this is going to lead, but it just was that affirmation to keep fucking going.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the VCon experience was portal for you to that you needed to step through, that you needed to move through of like, yeah, because in the beginning I was like, yeah, she's traveled, like thinking like she's done this solo road trip. She's gonna be good, right? But that was not the case at all. And I think it just, we think of in terms of to use a to be magnetic term of like leveling up. I don't know that she coined that term, but of leveling up. And I think going through that whole experience was part of that. Like it needed to happen because you had to really confront a lot of things, a lot of tender things in that moment.
Thankfully, a lot of tender things. Thankfully, not. I didn't have to see my worst fears come to fruition, is what I was thinking when you
Yeah,
were saying
yeah,
that.
but you had
Yeah,
to
but I had to
confront
address
your
them.
fears, right? And see what was on the other side and realize that there was so much on the other side and actually none of the actual fears that you thought were going to happen. It was so much more rich of an experience because you stepped through it. I was watching I was watching on the plane and Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. Of
I
course,
love
because
that.
I've seen most of the Bruce
Magic
everyday
and
themes
everyday
and
themes.
and this is a story for another time because I grew up on Bruce Lee. There's a lot of history there with my dad. My dad's like a like whatever the highest black belt, like he all the things, right? So I grew up with a lot of martial arts weapons in my home and a lot of Bruce Lee movies, a lot of all the kung fu movies, but in the film it's the story of Bruce Lee's life. So if you haven't seen it, he's just such an incredible, he was and continues to be incredible soul. But they talk about, confronting the uh demon or whatnot, but it's in you. It's you, like, and I'm not saying it's you, but like, right? Like confronting it, we think it's all these external circumstances, like these things, but really it's like our own fears. It's our own um inner critic or inner saboteur or inner demon or whatever it is at the time. And every time we go through a situation and I'm on my fifth saying of the episode. When we feel the fear and we do it anyways, I'm going to throw in one more, six sayings. On the other side of resistance is flow.
I'm here for 29 sayings if
Well,
you
that
got
is
them
my
in you today,
birthday,
Michelle.
July 29th. What on the other side of resistance is flow, right? So when you move through those things, so much more. It's just like when we focus on the outcome and we focus on the expectation, it's like you get exactly what you think. But when you trust the unknown and you relinquish control over what the expectation and the outcome is, usually the actual results are so much more rich and so much more vibrant than what we could have possibly imagined because we're still living in that place, like mentally, of the fears. And so, obviously, I don't, VCon seems like such a natural place to be a highlight because it was really big. It was like this really cool arc for you in this journey.
I had just moved into my own
Yeah, it
apartment.
was
It just was like
all,
very that
yeah,
time.
so much. Okay,
Yeah.
so for the sake of time, should we get into the natal chart of Karmic Mirror podcast?
Yes, let's get into the natal chart. I can't wait for you to share what stands out for you. For our listeners, I was invited to a launch party for Harmonia, which is a beautiful new line of anointed oils from my friend Connie. And
Hmm.
she had a launch ceremony that she invited me to. And one of her friends is an astrologer. And I got this idea from her because she paired up Connie's natal chart and she pulled a natal chart for Harmonia. And
Hmm.
I thought that that was really beautiful. And so, as we teased a little bit earlier, Michelle and I went back and forth of what's the official birth date, time, and location of Karmic Mirror. And we pulled it. And here we are. Michelle, I'm not going to go through the whole chart. The thing that immediately stood out for me is like a lot of Taurus and 10 house, but what stood out for you when you looked at Karmic Mirror's natal chart?
Okay, so I only looked at the sun, moon, and rising. I know you listed out the whole chart, but I was like, I can't go there right now. I'm not. But okay, so Karmic Mirror's sun is in Taurus in the 10th house. And 10th house is your midheaven, it's your public facing life. Our moon is in Taurus, also in the 10th house. And rising is in Leo. And so, starting with the sun and all of this Taurus 10th house energy, what first flashes up is that one of the first series that we did was on the nervous system. And to me, Taurus is this earth side grounded version of Venus, right? Because Taurus and Libra are both ruled by Venus. And Libra is like the air quality of Venus, like in the clouds. And Taurus is the earth grounded energy of Venus. And so there's the sensuality, there's the grounded, there's that steadfastness. And so, what comes up is that our podcast, as we have said so many times, isn't necessarily focused on just on the outer metrics of what people quote unquote think is successful in any type of venture. It's rooted in this aspect of embodiment, of values, of beauty. Um, and finding these really the truth, like what's our truth, right? That can evolve. But in the 10th house, like this is career, this is public life. So we're doing this, we're showing up. And to use what Kristen said in our last episode with her, is like we're showing up, being seen, trying, and being seen growing by putting ourselves out here on this podcast, but we're doing it from a place of keeping ourselves grounded and being in our body. For me, Taurus is my moon, also Taurus moon for the podcast. And for me, that is like the moon is all about your, or I mean, I'm talking about the sun, but also the moon is all about body and emotions. And so that Taurus energy, that feels really resonant to me. Like if the sun is where we shine, if it's our core identity, um, then it's to be deeply embodied and to be grounded and to root into a sense of beauty. And I think that we really do put that through, whether it's like visuals and I don't even, you know how I create. Like sometimes I'm like last minute on the posts, and if people listening don't know, I tend to do most of the social media aspect of the creating the
But if
post.
you see double posts in the story, you know that I'm up in the Karmic
Yeah,
Mirror.
yeah. But
Right?
for me,
But you're right. Michelle handles the most of it.
yeah.
So it's
And
beautiful
a lot
aesthetically.
of people have mentioned that, like, and it's always it really is so pleasing to hear, and I don't expect it either. So when I hear it, it's always a little bit of a surprise. But people always comment on how beautiful the visuals are. And for me, outside of all of these esoteric systems, my character strengths, appreciation of love and beauty is, I'm sorry, appreciation of beauty and excellence is a core character strength of mine. Like it's really important. I have a Taurus moon. So for me, beauty and that level of excellence or in what I put out is important. It's also just innate. And so it makes total sense that the body, the emotional tone, the sun core identity of Karmic Mirror is really rooted in beauty. And I don't mean beauty in the surface level, but beauty in just like those deeper levels of, yes, it may be pleasing to the eye, but it ultimately beauty to me, it makes you feel good. So that comes up. 10th house public facing, right? We said all of those things, but
Feels so
yeah,
obvious. I know
yeah.
it's like, but when that came up to me, and I'm still, as you know, learning, and I might have shared this with you, but on a line podcast recently, because Jenna Zoe has that two line
Mm,
and Taylor has a three, and she talks about 3 years after Jenna will say something to her, Taylor, because she's got that three line, will say, "That's what you were talking
mhm.
about." And Jenna will be like, "Yeah." So I'm still there with astrology, but when I saw that 10th house, which again, I was like, I can't wait to talk. I can't wait to get Michelle's interpretation of this. All I knew was like that public facing, and we've got that a lot. So that felt really cool about here.
Yeah, it feels like um being embodied, leading through, like, we talked about this with Stephanie a little bit about being a role model and being a leader and what that looks like in this new age, even when we think about Aquarian age. It is through
Hmm.
your own embodiment. It's like living the example versus just trying to tell people how to live or trying to be the expert. You are actually living it with, and I think that speaks to the Taurus qualities. I think there's the aspect, like I said, of the nervous system series. That was like one of the first things we wanted to talk about. And that speaks to Taurus moon as well, like being grounded in your body and taking care of yourself. And then the rising sign Leo.
Yeah, what's your interpretation of that?
I think that Leos can exhibit a lot of creative expression naturally. Leos are associated with the heart center. And Leos are also associated with leadership. And so, in a high frequency of Leo qualities, you would lead through the heart. And I think that's true to our mission and what we try to show up as is like being heart-centered and leading with that versus like, and that's a practice too. And that makes sense to me because the rising sign, it's like, who are you rising into? Who are you ascending into? Who are you becoming? And I think through the wisdom of the body, Taurus moon, through the practice of shining in your 10th house, of doing it publicly, and through leading through the heart, we're practicing what it looks like to embody leading through the heart versus leading through the mind. And I think I say it's a practice and it's who it's becoming because the natural instinct is to think our way through things because it's just kind of the world we live in. But neither you or I are meant to think through anything. We have an open head and open ajna in human design. Neither of us are meant to think our way through anything. We're not meant to figure anything out. We're meant to feel it out and lead through the heart. And I think that the podcast is like this beautiful portal or vessel to practice that publicly in so many ways. Um, and so And Leos also have this magnetic quality, right? They're ruled by the sun. And Leo is, yeah, like people associate, right? Like old school astrology, right? You may, or magazine astrology is like, oh, Leos are self-centered and blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, they're ruled by the sun. It's the center of the universe in so many ways. The planets move around the sun. And so there is a magnetism to that. And I think what that shows up as is the way that we draw in people who are, whether it's guests or they become friends or build into our community just by like practicing being embodied and leading through the heart and doing it in a way that's public, which is very vulnerable, which hits on these tender buttons of being seen and being seen trying, being seen failing, or just being seen in your process. You get to do that and you draw people in because that's very magnetic, but it's also very authentic to just show up as you are, even when it's not perfect or curated. And I think the people that we are really truly trying to and are connecting with, those people are drawn to that authentic, like real, genuine, raw energy of like, yeah, I don't need to be perfectly edited and curated because that's really freaking overwhelming and it's exhausting. And people are tired of it, I think. And so that's my take on the also
Yeah.
Leo energy is super generous, right? It's kind of in a really extreme, maybe not as healthy expression. It can feel a little magnanimous, right? Like Leo royalty, but it's also generous. Leos are so loyal and generous. And I think that speaks through the way that we're like very curious and we just want to share our excitement, share our curiosity, and we want to share the expertise of other people and allow people to come on and share through their generosity of spirit and expertise and just let the cards fall where they are, where they do.
I was looking, I love that. I was getting chills so much, and I can't wait for us to continue to, once you look at the whole chart too, for us to continue to work with the energies of Karmic Mirror. We weren't even trying to pull this chart, but it feels, yeah, like
Hmm.
that's the essence of Karmic Mirror. So, we didn't intend to have it birthed on that day, but here's where it is, and it feels very aligned. I We had this check-in, and I'm gonna pull out just how has karmic supported your self-love because we always like to go back to the
Hmm.
self-love. I'll start because what was coming up for me, Karmic Mirror has given me this sense of being proud, of feeling accomplished,
Mm.
and the more and more I was thinking on reflecting on this, that message kept coming through. One of our guests had, sent me a thing a month or so ago and just said, "Wow, I'm really proud of you guys. Like it's
Yeah.
hard to keep that up for a year, and that's really cool." Vicky Pattinson, who's leave it to me to find all of the UK reality stars. I love her, and she's starting a podcast, and I got really excited about it, and I posted it, and then I was watching one of their reels where they're literally shouting out their podcast team.
Hmm.
Okay. And their podcast team is 5 or 6 people deep, and she has a co host, and there's a huge set all set up. And beautiful, right? It's
Yeah.
beautiful. And I love that for her. And it's amazing. And what I reflected on was, girl, you and I are doing that all ourselves. The editing, the posting, the concepts, everything. And that makes me really proud. And I feel like it's really built on our morals, our ethics, our
Hmm.
values. What our legacy is what I feel like
Hmm.
we're building here. I'm just excited to see where we go. And so when I sent you that little scribble of Karmic Mirror brought me back to life, I get a little emotional, but Karmic Mirror has brought back confidence. It's
Hmm.
brought back self-love because initially it was something to help me dream. To your comments earlier, it was that accountability. It was giving me something that to show up
Hmm.
for. I've reflected a lot that it's really brought me back to this place of almost like, who was I? And so when I saw that Leo rising,
Yeah.
it's like, My Virgo may be my personal rising, but I really was stoked to lean into that Leo energy. And again, I think all things well intended and intentional. I think it was very kismet and on purpose that you were my co-host
Mhm.
that brought all of these elements. So even when you were saying earlier, like, I can sound a little harsh. Do you know what? Like I need a friend. I need someone to show me those qualities because I lean so far on the other areas and show me that it's safe to have those elements maybe of that Leo. So I won't like stereotype or pigeonhole you into that so much, but I think it's really supported my self-love and confidence of who I am, that I'm intentionally meant to be, that people are brought into my lives like you to be those mirrors to enhance my gifts and my strengths and help me look at that mirror when I'm really triggered. Because if I was meant to be a Leo sun, I was going to be born a Leo sun.
Mhm.
But I sure do freaking love that it's a rising for Karmic Mirror. It kind of like gives me that
Yeah.
extra energy to lean into Karmic Mirror. What about you? How's Karmic Mirror supported your self-love? What comes up for you?
Yeah, I think it just gives me new layers of acceptance in any way that I show up, right? It's one thing to accept and to embrace the ever flowing changes, right? And I've done this through various facets, right? Through cycle syncing or learning about that and embodying that and through changing careers and through all of these esoteric languages that we speak and but it's a totally different thing to do it, record yourself, and then put it out for other people to consume. It's like putting your own process and your own inner world, literally through a microphone for to be perceived. And when you don't have control over, we never have control over how we're perceived. And may not even like being perceived. But when you choose to put yourself publicly out there through a podcast, whether you have 5 listeners or 5,000, you you just again, it's like another agreement that I made to be perceived and to not sweat it, like not worry about it. And what that does is um I think it deepens that acceptance and that love for all the different facets of who I am and how I may show up from day to day. And even when it's in a version of myself that I am pleased with or I like, and or it's a version of myself that I'm like, I don't know, or whatever, right? Like it's all allows the space to, not just accept, but to fall more in love with yourself. And that's very Leo of me to like be like, I'm falling in love with myself more. But the truth of the matter is, it doesn't just happen. Yeah, there's the Leo qualities that maybe that maybe lend itself to that a little bit more. But that doesn't mean it's any easier for me than the anyone else. It's just different. And I know that
Mm.
self-love can be really tricky for some people. It can be really tender because some people it feels very elusive. And to that, I just say, like, it didn't just happen. It is a practice and it's a decision every single day. Every time we show up and or every time there's a new episode published, or I share it on Instagram or whatever, right? It's like further layering into this agreement and solidifying this practice of like, yeah, I'm going to show up and I'm not going to worry about how I'm being perceived because the only thing that matters to me is how I feel about myself and how the people that mean something deeply to me, like how do they feel? But also like you know, you we die on this earth with just ourselves at the end of the day. And yes, there is legacy in what you leave behind in the people's hearts and in the people that you connect with. But at the end of the day, like I'm me in this body with myself. And so if I don't love myself when I'm really cringy or when I'm being a bitch or when I'm being a really, lovely human being, then what do I have? And so I think this
Mhm.
commitment of like just doing it in this way, it's like you just get to like you get to know yourself more and you get to just accept and love parts of yourself. And it's almost like taking it out of yourself when you put it out in public, right? You take this part of yourself and you put it out in front of you. And it's like this practice of being like, okay, if this was a person outside of myself, would I treat them any different than I do in my own head? Would I speak to her any differently? Because I sure would. I would be more tender, right? It's like when we tell people, whether it's in coaching or in vulnerable conversations, like, what advice would you give if this was someone if this was a person that you loved deeply, a friend, a family member, what would you say? How would you speak to them? Now speak to yourself in that way. And I think when you take it out of yourself and you put yourself out there in that way, you get to try that on for size. How does it feel to pull this out of yourself and speak to yourself as if you were somebody that you actually really, really care deeply about? And you care about how, the words that you speak to them and the words you speak about them. And that's how I feel about this podcast and this question.
I mean, I love your Leo-ness. I have very close Leo
Hmm.
friends and I never think I kind of picked up on that. And so, what I think about when you're sharing those qualities, I know sometimes with these qualities, at least for me, sometimes, I don't want to speak for you, especially Leo. What's the verbiage you were using? Like they self-confidence, self-love, just naturally they tend to have that.
Well, I think I was saying how Leos are ruled by the heart, but
Okay,
there is
okay.
sometimes, I think, maybe, I don't know if it's confidence, but there is this kind of, yeah, magnetism or firiness. It's
I
a
feel that
boldness, I think.
it's like a boldness, a presence.
Yeah.
Even if you're not feeling it internally, I can see that not just you, the
Hmm.
very distinct Leo people that are very
Yeah.
close in my life. There is that like it's almost this energetic boldness is maybe how
Hmm.
I would say it. And so what came up for me when you were talking is that I need Michelle's in this life. To
Hmm.
I need Michelle's to expand me to, that's my journey is that self-love, that confidence in showing up authentically. And now whatever's going on internally for you, Michelle, I know you do the work there. But it's been such a blessing for me to witness that for you because it's really helped. I mean, just look at my story earlier about talking about getting cut off, right? For
Yeah.
you to be open and vulnerable and come out with that, it's just so expansive. And so I would say to people out there who feel like maybe they have a lot of confidence or take up space, if that's bordering on the line of not being humble or being kind or like
Yeah.
bullying over
Yeah.
people. But everyone is fearfully and wonderfully made, and we need that Leo energy to help support others to step into that. And I was just thinking about that when you were talking through that, which is so beautiful.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I did say that we like die alone, but but I mean, we also don't live alone on this earth, right? Back to the karmic mirrors. We're all reflecting whether we choose to see it or not. We're still responding and reacting to what's being reflected back to us.
Mhm.
And and yeah, and unless you want to hole up and really, really hermit and not interact with any other humans, like your soul agreed to this. Your soul agreed to come here to be born and to be born through the people that you were born through, to interact with the people that you do and the spaces that you do for very specific reasons that only you and your soul can know. And the more you choose to see it and be open to it and agree to interact with it, the more you get to know yourself. And yeah, it's a choice.
I think I could go on and on and on because so much more is coming up for me, and maybe we'll save it for our 2-year recap. We'll have even more on our 2-year anniversary. And I think I'd just be remiss if I didn't bring up one, what an honor it has been to be on this
Hmm.
journey with you, my dear
Yeah.
friend. And I'm really proud of what we've built. I'm really proud of the community we're building. I'm really proud of the people we are and how we show up for each other. And I am really thankful to everyone who has been on this journey with us. So, from people who just out of the gate were being our hype women, people who have shared, people who have commented. The other day, we found out we were making lists in Norway on Apple
We're
iTunes.
trending in Norway. That's freaking awesome. Whatever that
Hello,
means.
Norwegians. We don't know what it means,
But we like it.
but it just continues to reaffirm that it was always about how we could reach people, not how many people we could reach. And that is really feeling aligned. And I'm just really proud of us and just want to thank our community and all of those who have lifted us up, who have shared, who have given us insight, along the way, podcast tips, feedback, all of the good things.
Yeah, and keep them coming because, like, one thing, we haven't talked at all, and I think we're coming to an end, but about what's next. And, I'd love to have more people, if you listen anywhere, to connect with us. Like, Instagram, I think, is probably our main space, although we are on Facebook, but like, we're mostly on Instagram just because it's what's there. Or I think Allie and I both have, I mean, Allie and I do both have a Substack. So if you're there, find us. But like, I want people to message us or comment and like, I don't care what it is, if it's a question or an idea, or you're like, I want you to talk about this, like, whether or not it's something that we do, I think just opening up more of that back and forth with anyone who might listen is something that I hope to see more of in the future. And maybe this year we'll get to put our videos out there. That's something that's been kind of gently whispering to me. I don't have a real pressure urge for it, but it is in the back of my thoughts and my feelings to want to be seen visually. So whether that's on YouTube would be really cool, or just putting more of our video out there. That's kind of what I hope to see next in terms of, yeah. So, and if you're someone who you feel like your expertise or what you practice or specialize in would be really, really cool to speak about here, I'd love to know. Like, I think, just calling all that in.
Yeah, I'm just going to continue to call in everything you just called in and also just leave this space for the magic in every day as you and I have seen. When we lead from a place of authenticity and pure values and pure intent, the universe will open up opportunities and people and let us keep expanding with what we're doing. So we are just so grateful for everyone in our community. And Michelle, I'm so grateful for you. And if you've made it this far, we love you. Catch us next time on a future episode.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in. If you resonate with today's conversation, connect with us on Instagram at Karmic Mirror Podcast and send us a message.
And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. And if you're loving Karmic Mirror, we'd appreciate a glowing review or a share with someone who could benefit.
As we close, remember, life is not a one-size-fits-all approach. How are you honoring your unique path? Stay curious and always be kind to yourself. Until next time on Karmic Mirror.